You spend nearly $1 trillion a year on the military. You have boats, planes, you have all sorts of means of technology that can kill, maim, and injure. You have a phenomenal military in the way that it can be used to attack anything else around, and supposedly the most expensive and supposedly the most technically sophisticated. So, when you find out that there are unidentified objects flying through your most prized military installations that shut off nuclear missiles at one point, that are hovering overhead, where videos like this get released to the public of craft that we can't identify doing things that not only can't we do, but don't know how they do it. I mean, is it us or is it not us? And if it's not us, what is it? And if you're the military, if you're the Pentagon, and you're seeing ships that are going into the water, ships that are performing new maneuvers around your own ships and then plopping into the water, then you have questions to answer. What are they? How are they invading our most prized sensitive spaces in the way that they are? How are they invading our airspace in the way that they are? How are they invading our water space in the way they are? How are they flying past our craft in the way they are? How are they blinking out of existence and into existence? How are they doing these things? And how much of this do you know? And how long have you known it? Now, the moment that the Pentagon starts taking UFOs seriously, how can that question not be asked? How can that question not be asked? How long have you known these things violating airspace and not notified members of Congress or notified anybody else that this was taking place? How could this question not be asked? This question had to get asked. And the question has just been asked. A watchdog from the Pentagon is now investigating the Pentagon for UFOs. How long has this been taking place? What do you know? How much information have you known it? And the IG is investigating this because it basically got word from Congress that there were certain stonewalling tactics that were put into place of this information being released, of course, in next month. This is fascinating. And on some level, logical as logical can be. Listen to Lou Elizondo, meaning Elizondo, who was part of the government, at the very least the investigation, does the research on this for several years, supposedly, and comes back and is saying stuff like this. Meaning, how do you ignore the guy who ran the program for the military that's saying, yes, there are things in our skies, we have no idea what they are, but here's all sorts of information and evidence, classified and not, to prove that this is reality? How do you say this is real? And then look at the military with the $1 trillion instrument and say, you didn't know this? How much of this do you know? How much of this have you been hiding from Congress, from the public? What do you know? Now, this is not a criminal investigation, but this is an investigation into the handling of this subject.
The fourth observable is one that's just now getting attention, which is transmedium travel. Are there examples of transmedium vehicles that we make? Sure. Let's take a seaplane, for example. A seaplane is neither a good airplane nor is it a good boat, but it's a compromise. Yet the things that we're observing, both on radar and gun camera footage, and now it appears even sonar, don't seem to have any type of design compromise or any type of performance compromise. They seem to be able to fly in low Earth atmosphere, in some cases 50 feet above the water, in other cases 80,000 feet and even higher, and in other cases underwater.
Think about what he's saying for the moment. We don't have that capability. It's not ours. And when I say it's not ours, by definition, I'm saying and talking about it in terms of ownership, meaning somebody owns it. It's not interdimensional fish. It's not something that's just popping into and out of existence in order to kind of pull humanity forward. Think of how selfish that is, or how what's the word I'm looking for? Egotistical that is. That reality itself is pulling humanity forward. You almost have to invoke God or something similar to get that particular effect, as opposed to life is. When it gets the conditions to grow, it grows. And if you give something, what, a billion years, 2 billion years, X number of billion years, it can grow into something that could conceive of its universe, look up in the sky, and say, am I alone? Now, I am not against this notion of there being something else, but between there being something else that is trying to pull humanity forward, where under that logic humanity is in this kind of petri dish or this kind of golden vase that something interacts with, or that this experience, whether it was conceived when a hard drive was kicked on or whatever, there are human beings in this experience, and there may be something else in this experience that looked up at their sky just like we looked up at our sky to say, are we alone? And in the same way that we visit our celestial neighbors, they probably started off visiting their celestial neighbors. But at some point, the technology reached an inflection point where you can go from point A to point B. Now, the point that I'm making here is they are talking about this in the context of technology. This is not in the context of a life form. Am I against or beyond paranormal activity? No. I totally believe in the phenomena and all of this other weird stuff. You've heard me talk about my own weird experiences, either with trying for contact or with the whole spirit guide stuff, where when I was like 19, I started trying to make contact with my guide when I heard that that stuff existed. Yeah, I've had a lot of weird experiences as a kid, especially after she did make contact. But that was me pushing for it. I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is I'm not beyond the notion of something strange that could be going on that is beyond our thinking in regards to what we're thinking, etc. Fair enough. I'm just saying in the very specific case that we're dealing with, they're talking about it as if it's technology. And if it's technology, it's owned by something. And if it's owned by something or being flown by something, then yeah, that is a big, big deal, especially if it's not a person in the sense of a human being. So yeah, that's a big deal that something is invading our airspace. And whether it's some other country on this planet or whether it's something off this planet, it is still vital that we know. My concern is that the we know stuff goes into military instead of, let's say, in Department of State. Meaning, in the real world physical matter reality, we're looking at stuff as a threat. And in the context of looking at it as a threat, you can make your own monsters. It's invading our airspace. Well, it may not consider airspace in the context that we consider airspace. There's all sorts of things that could be taking place here. I'm just making the very specific case. They're talking about this as if it's technology. And if it's indeed technology that is flying in your airspace, that seems to be radically different in regards to its design, capabilities, its functions, and it's not us. How long have you known it? When did you start recording it? How much do you know about it? And you can imagine the Inspector General and the person who's investigating this probably has 1,000 questions. Here's the document right here. Debrief, doing good work. Memorandum for distribution. And this is from the Assistant Inspector General of Evaluations, Space, Intelligence, Engineering, and Oversight, Ralph Stone. I just read it. We plan to begin a subject evaluation in May 2021. The objective of the evaluation is to determine the extent to which the Department of Defense has taken action regarding the unidentified aerial phenomena. We may revise the objective as the evaluation proceeds as we consider suggestions from management for additional or revised objectives. We will perform the evaluation at the Office of Secretary of Defense Military Service Combat Command Combat Support Agencies, Defense Agency, and the Military Criminal Investigative Organization. We may identify additional locations during the evaluation. Please provide us with the point of contact for the evaluation within 5 days of the date of this memorandum. The point of contact should be a government employee or military service member, the G515 pay band equivalent, or the military equivalent. Send contact name, title, grade, pay band, phone number, and email address to blank. You can obtain information about the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General or the Department of Defense Directive 510601, Inspector General of the Department of Defense, April 20th, 2012, and amended the Department of Instruction 705003, Office of Inspector General of the Department of Defense, access to records and information, March 22nd, 2013, our website, etc. If you have any questions, contact blank. We need to know what you know, period. Send it to us ASAP. We'll see where this goes. I mean, what's interesting in the document is it says we leave open the right to amend. And I think that's interesting. The reason I think it's interesting is what they probably have to deal with is there's going to be information that is going to be classified. And there's going to be information that may affect how we proceed with this. Meaning, if you hit upon something and somebody comes to you and says, look, you can't open this door. This is not a door that you can open. Well, the Department of Defense has to know that going into it, in which case they probably say we'll modify how we go about this case as information reveals itself. As information reveals itself, they may curtail what they expose to the public, maybe even curtail what they even tell the public, meaning you may not even know that there's a door there that they're hiding. Like there's all sorts of information that they may choose not to expose the moment that they disclose or they come across other information. Yes, it may be somewhat indicative that these guys are taking this seriously, that they're opening up this investigation. By the same token, it may not ultimately mean anything if the investigator comes to the conclusion that the Department of Defense was correct in either withholding certain information or hiding certain information. So, yes, I suppose you would expect this reaction in a case where they're taking it seriously and where the Department of Defense is taking it seriously. But what comes of it on some level is going to be dependent upon what they were hiding, why they were hiding it, whether or not they believe the information needed to be hidden in the first place, whether it's just they're not taking it seriously, whether there's all sorts of things that can be taking place behind the scenes. I guess my thing is, whether it's positive or negative that they're opening this, I think it's positive because it means they're taking it seriously. From the standpoint of what it reveals, it may be nothing if the people basically accept the premise that the Department of Defense has been running with. This is still a wait and see. This is still a wait and see. But I will say, I do think it's positive that they're doing it because it's the most natural thing in the world, right? Like something is invading our airspace. You accept the premise that something is invading our airspace, but you don't care what it is? Why don't you care what it is? You just said that these things cut off our nuclear missiles. How are you so cavalier about the thing that's invading our airspace and our sensitive areas? Like, that's what I mean. It's a logical take to say, well, yeah, we need to investigate this. But apparently, this investigation was kicked up by the dust that Congress was making, saying that they weren't taking it or getting the information in the way that they were supposed to get the information. So, right here. Two sources familiar with the matter told debrief IG officers, right here. Two sources familiar with the matter told debrief that the IG office's decision to launch the evaluation was prompted by complaints that congressional leadership regarding the DoD's handling of the topic. Basically, Congress didn't like the way the Department of Defense was handling the UFO topic. Now, part of that could be that they're not telling Congress what they actually know, and the Department of Defense, the IG, may be getting involved because of such. But if you think of special access projects or other projects that are somewhat classified, especially if you have something that's invading our airspace that they don't necessarily want to own up to, either because of a giggle factor or they just don't want to have the conversation because for the longest time it's been off the table for conversation. But Congress is now like, well, wait a minute. These things have been invading our airspace? You mean that's real? And not just that's real, you've known about it and haven't done anything about it? And then done anything about it becomes to, well, what are they? And Congress is now being stuck with this question, considering the reality of this has basically been accepted over the past several years. And so if we accept the reality that something is real in this case, and that it's technology on some level, then you need to explain what it is. And if you can't explain what it is, you need to tell us that you can't explain what it is. Like, all of this becomes, all of these things bespeak of a country coming to grips with the fact that UFOs are real. So I can't necessarily complain that they're doing this. I will complain that it seems that the report will not be forthcoming next month, that they're putting it off on some level. I will complain that the various organizations are not necessarily, let's say, stonewalling. And on some level, I don't believe that the report is going to give us exactly what we want. Meaning, I would love for that report to say we're not alone, and the report may hint at that. And I got to be honest, I don't know how the report doesn't say that, considering the things that Elizondo was saying, or that Marco Rubio was saying, or what's the other gentleman, Ratcliffe was saying. Like, they are talking about this stuff as if it's technology. They're not talking about interdimensional fish. So in that sense, I am interested in seeing what the report says whenever that report is finally released. But this is not a bad thing. And if the IG, the Watchdog, turns around and is more hard-nosed and more open to allowing the public to know, then that would be a positive. Because in that situation, you have somebody who's probably, or who's trying to hold them accountable. The catch becomes, what is the tenor of the IG, and what is the IG looking for? And hopefully, the IG of mine is of mine that this information should be made public, and to not allow the various agencies to block oversight of this data and information. No, I don't believe that we're going to get the entire story. I do believe we'll get a version of it. And I even want to know that. I want to say like, share, and subscribe.